story begins with Eliza's arrival in a frontier town that seems almost suspended in time, a place where dusty streets and wooden storefronts stretch under the harsh sun. She steps off the train with her small worn trunk, her delicate fingers clutching the handle as though it were a lifeline. Every nerve in her body is taut with apprehension. She's not a naive girl entirely unfamiliar with hardship. After all, she has lived through a lonely, circumscribed existence in a bustling eastern city, but nothing in her past prepares her for this raw, untamed landscape. From the moment she sets foot on the platform, the town itself seems to judge her. Men tip their hats and pause to watch. Women whisper behind gloved hands and children stare openly, curiosity mingling with suspicion. Eliza senses the unspoken question in the air. Who is she and why has she come here? Her heart races, not only because she is in a new environment, but also because she is aware that she is expected to marry a man she has never met. A man whose life, customs, and expectations are entirely foreign to her. Fear coils in her stomach like a live thing. She feels exposed, like prey on display, yet a small stubborn spark of hope flickers inside her. Her eyes dart across the station. She notices the rough-hewn wooden benches, the tracks stretching endlessly into the horizon, and the distant mountains rising like silent guardians. These mountains, she tells herself, are both beautiful and intimidating. She grips the trunk tighter, imagining what lies ahead. An unfamiliar home, a new husband, and a life she can only picture in fragments of imagination. Each step she takes toward the edge of the platform feels like a step into a story that is both thrilling and terrifying. It is in this tense atmosphere that her future husband, Dakota, appears. He is tall, broad-shouldered, with the quiet strength of someone intimately familiar with both the land and its dangers. His skin is sun-kissed, his dark eyes sharp but kind, and there is a calm, almost playful confidence in his movements. He approaches her slowly, allowing her the space to acclimate to his presence. The first words he utters are teasing yet disarming. "Darlin', I don't bite unless—" There is a warmth in his voice, an undertone of humor that seems designed to break the frozen fear in her chest. Eliza freezes momentarily, unsure whether to laugh, blush, or retreat. She senses that these words are a test, a challenge, and perhaps an invitation all at once. Despite her anxiety, Eliza notices small details about Dakota that begin to chip away at her fear. His boots are worn but clean, suggesting practicality and respect for his tools. His hands, large and capable, rest lightly on his hips, a posture that communicates both readiness and ease. She observes the way he scans the station, not with suspicion but with an awareness that seems protective, as though he is taking mental note of every potential danger and calculating how to ensure her safety. These subtle gestures hint at the kind of man he might be, someone who is at once formidable and considerate. As they prepare to leave the station together, a sudden breeze kicks up dust from the tracks, swirling around her ankles. Eliza flinches, pulling the edges of her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Dakota steps closer, not intrusively, but close enough that she feels the warmth emanating from him. He gestures toward the horse waiting to carry them to his homestead, his movements fluid and confident. "Shall we?" he asks simply, offering a small, reassuring smile. It is a small act, but in that moment, Eliza realizes that while she has come into a world she does not yet understand, she is not entirely alone. Her fear has not vanished. Fear is a stubborn companion, but the first seeds of curiosity and trust have been planted. The arrival scene, therefore, is not just a physical transition from one place to another, but a symbolic crossing from a life of isolation and uncertainty to one of potential growth, partnership, and adventure. This opening sets the tone for the story, establishing the emotional stakes, the tension between fear and hope, and the initial spark of connection that will drive Eliza and Dakota's relationship forward. After the tense, almost cinematic arrival at the station, the next pivotal moment in Eliza's journey is her first real encounter with Dakota, her future husband. This meeting is far more than a simple introduction. It is a collision of two worlds, cultures, and life experiences, wrapped in the raw uncertainty of the frontier. The significance of this moment lies in the subtle dance of fear, curiosity, and tentative trust that will shape their relationship in the chapters to come. Eliza watches Dakota approach, his tall frame moving with ease and confidence across the uneven station platform. There is a quiet dignity in his movements, a stark contrast to the bustling town around him, where everyone seems suspicious of strangers, and wary of outsiders. His presence immediately commands attention without demanding it. He stops a respectful distance away, giving her the space to steady herself, yet close enough that the warmth of his aura is palpable. His dark eyes meet hers, and there is a flicker of amusement there, as if he can sense her fear and uncertainty, but without cruelty. Then comes the moment that will linger in her memory. His first words. "Darlin', I don't bite unless—" The phrase hangs in the air, teasing and disarming simultaneously. Eliza freezes, caught between laughter and apprehension. The ellipsis at the end feels like a promise, a mystery, and perhaps a subtle warning all at once. She recognizes in that half-smile and playful tone that Dakota is testing her, not threatening her. He is measuring her reaction, gauging the boundaries of her courage and offering her a glimpse of humor in a situation that feels overwhelmingly serious. For a moment, her fear softens, replaced by the sharp awareness of a new kind of tension, one that is personal, intimate, and undeniably human. As they exchange words, Eliza notices the details that begin to paint a fuller picture of who Dakota is. His hands are large, strong, and calloused, evidence of a life shaped by labor and survival. Yet he gestures with care, handling small objects or guiding her movements with a gentleness that belies his strength. His clothing, though simple, is practical and clean, reflecting someone who respects both himself and his environment. Even his stance is telling. Feet firmly planted, shoulders relaxed, a posture of confidence without arrogance. These details, small but deliberate, convey a man who is grounded, capable, and attentive to the world around him. The first encounter also carries a subtle undercurrent of cultural exchange. Dakota's appearance and mannerisms mark him as a man deeply connected to his Apache heritage. For Eliza, who has lived a life framed by city streets and rigid social expectations, this encounter is a jolt, a reminder that she is entering a world with its own rhythms, rules, and ways of seeing. The very way he moves, the cadence of his speech, and the natural grace in his handling of his horse all speak of a life intimately tied to the land, a life that demands both respect and adaptability. Her initial fear is amplified by this realization, but so is her curiosity. As they prepare to leave the station, the tension between them shifts slightly. Dakota gestures toward the waiting horse with a fluid, unhurried motion, inviting her to step into the unknown without pressure. He maintains that delicate balance of proximity and space, allowing her to decide whether to approach, retreat, or remain cautious. Eliza finds herself studying him more closely, the way his eyes track the environment, how his movements anticipate the horse's reactions, the subtle kindness in his attention to her comfort. Each small observation chips away at the rigid walls of fear she has built around herself, replacing them with cautious curiosity. The first encounter is thus a microcosm of the story's larger themes. The tension between fear and trust, the intersection of two very different worlds, and the slow, almost imperceptible emergence of connection. It is not romantic in the conventional sense. There are no overt declarations of love, but it establishes the emotional groundwork for intimacy and mutual understanding. Dakota's humor, patience, and quiet strength, paired with Eliza's vulnerability and perceptiveness, create a dynamic that will carry forward into every interaction, shaping how she navigates this new life and how he comes to see her as a partner rather than a stranger. By the end of this encounter, Eliza is still afraid, but her fear has been tempered by the first flickers of trust. Dakota has become not just a figure of uncertainty, but a potential guide, protector, and companion. The tension is no longer purely external. It is internal as well, a mix of apprehension, intrigue, and the faint stirrings of hope. This first meeting, framed against the stark backdrop of the frontier town, establishes the emotional stakes of the story and sets the stage for the journey they will undertake together, both literally, on the road to the homestead, and metaphorically, into the uncharted territory of each other's hearts. After the brief, tension-laden introduction at the station, Eliza and Dakota embark on the journey to his homestead, a ride that is deceptively simple, but rich with narrative and emotional significance. The journey on horseback is not merely a physical transition from the town to the wilderness. It is also a symbolic crossing from fear toward cautious trust, and from the familiar into a life that will demand adaptation, courage, and emotional openness. Every step of the horse's hooves against the dry earth mirrors the tentative steps Eliza takes into a new world. The ride begins with an almost comical awkwardness. Eliza, who has never spent much time on horseback, struggles to find a balance between trying to appear composed and suppressing the tremors of anxiety that ripple through her body. Her hands clutch the reins with white-knuckled determination, and she casts anxious glances at the passing landscape, noting every tree, every rocky incline, and the occasional glint of sunlight on a distant river. Dakota, seated on his horse with the relaxed confidence of someone who has ridden these trails countless times, watches her carefully. He notices the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her grip tightens whenever a branch brushes past, and the way her eyes dart between the road ahead and him, seeking reassurance. True to his teasing nature, Dakota breaks the silence with light humor. "Relax, darling. Horses can sense fear. They like it when their riders breathe." His voice carries a warmth and ease that contrasts with the harsh, wind-whipped terrain around them. The humor is not meant to mock, but to invite her into a shared experience, to ease the rigidity of her fear. Eliza is hesitant to laugh, but she cannot help a small, nervous smile. In that moment, the distance between them diminishes slightly. Not enough to erase her uncertainty, but enough to hint that connection is possible. The physical environment itself plays a crucial role in shaping their journey. The path winds through rolling plains dotted with sagebrush and punctuated by the occasional copse of trees. Dust rises in clouds around the horse's hooves, catching the light and painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber. Dakota points out landmarks along the way, small stories embedded in the land, a stream where his family once fished, a cliffside that offers shelter during storms, a grove of cottonwoods that signals the proximity of water. These descriptions serve a dual purpose. They provide grounding for the reader and also subtly educate Eliza about the rhythms and logic of his world. She begins to understand that this land is not simply a backdrop, but a living, breathing entity that commands respect. As the journey continues, moments of silence allow Eliza to observe Dakota more closely. She notes the careful way he adjusts the horse's reins, the way his posture absorbs the animal's movements, and the subtle gestures he makes to maintain control without dominance. There is a fluidity to his movements, a quiet skill born of years of familiarity with the land. His attention is never intrusive. He allows her to struggle, to learn, and to find her footing at her own pace. This patience begins to erode the wall of fear she has built around herself. Along the way, they encounter minor obstacles, a fallen branch across the path, a sudden gust of wind that startles the horses, a shallow creek that must be crossed. Each obstacle becomes a small lesson in trust, cooperation, and observation. Dakota demonstrates calmly and without condescension how to guide the horse safely. Eliza imitates, falters, and tries again, gradually realizing that she is capable of more than she imagined. These shared challenges, though modest, form the first, tangible bonds of partnership between them. By the time they crest a small ridge and glimpse the homestead in the distance, a modest collection of wooden structures nestled against the mountainside, Eliza's fear has softened into cautious anticipation. She senses that the life awaiting her is unpredictable and demanding, but it also holds the potential for growth, learning, and companionship. Dakota, too, feels a subtle shift. He recognizes her resilience and notes the spark of curiosity that has begun to replace her initial terror. The ride home thus functions as both a literal and metaphorical journey. It establishes the physical setting of the story, develops character dynamics, and deepens the emotional stakes. Through shared challenges, gentle humor, and observation, Eliza and Dakota begin the slow process of moving from strangers to tentative allies. The ride is uneasy, yes, but it is also rich with possibility, a prelude to the complex, layered relationship that will define the story's unfolding narrative. After the uneasy ride from the station, Eliza finally arrives at Dakota's homestead, a modest but sturdy collection of wooden buildings nestled against the edge of the plains. With the distant mountains standing sentinel, the homestead is far simpler than anything Eliza has known. It lacks the conveniences and decor of her past life, yet it exudes a sense of order and purpose shaped by years of hard work and intimate knowledge of the land. The moment she steps down from her horse, she feels the enormity of her new reality settle over her like a heavy shawl. Her first impression of the homestead is one of quiet isolation. The wind whispers through the tall grasses. The only sounds are the creaking of wood and the distant call of birds. and the sky seems impossibly vast. For Eliza, who has spent her life in the structured confines of the city, this openness is both exhilarating and terrifying. She clutches her small trunk, the weight of it symbolizing not just her belongings but the emotional burden she carries, fear, uncertainty, and the fragile hope that this new life might hold something better. Dakota notices her hesitation and offers a simple, steadying hand. "Come on, darling. Let's get you inside." The homestead itself is utilitarian but welcoming. The main cabin has a rough-hewn wooden floor, a stone fireplace, and a few handcrafted pieces of furniture. There is a practicality to every item, a sense that each was chosen not for beauty alone but for durability and utility. Small touches of care are evident: fresh herbs hanging by the window, a stack of firewood neatly arranged, a broom propped against the wall. These details speak volumes about Dakota's character, someone who values order, self-reliance, and respect for the land. Eliza observes everything carefully, taking mental notes of what she might do to make herself useful, to earn her place in this unfamiliar world. Dakota gives her a brief tour, explaining the function of each room, the location of the water source, and the routines that sustain the household. He does this with a quiet patience, never rushing her, allowing her to absorb the unfamiliar surroundings at her own pace. Eliza finds herself noticing his attentiveness, the ease with which he moves through his own environment, and the subtle ways he anticipates her needs without being overbearing. These observations slowly chip away at the fear that has accompanied her since leaving the train station. The first evening is filled with small, intimate moments that begin to build their relationship. Dakota starts a fire in the hearth while Eliza arranges her few belongings, creating a small corner of the cabin that feels like hers. There is an unspoken understanding that this space, though modest, is her sanctuary, a place where she can begin to settle her mind and body. Dakota offers her a simple meal of roasted vegetables and freshly baked bread, and they eat together in companionable silence. In these quiet moments, Eliza begins to feel the subtle shift from being a guest in a strange place to being part of a shared life. Dakota's gestures of care, though understated, are significant. He leaves her small tokens: a handful of fresh flowers gathered from nearby meadows, a jar of honey he collected from a wild hive, and painted stones that he places in her room. Each gift is deliberate, a way of communicating kindness and thoughtfulness without words. Eliza, initially wary of these gestures, gradually recognizes them as sincere attempts to welcome her, to ease the isolation she feels and to build trust. She begins to understand that Dakota's world is not as threatening as she imagined, even if it is foreign. Yet the homestead is not without its challenges. The lack of modern conveniences, the demands of daily survival, and the unfamiliar rhythms of frontier life confront Eliza with moments of discomfort and self-doubt. Carrying water from the well, tending to the small vegetable patch, or navigating the rough terrain tests her physically and mentally. But Dakota's patient guidance, his gentle encouragement, and the shared humor in these early struggles help her find her footing. Slowly, she begins to see that her fears can coexist with moments of curiosity, courage, and even enjoyment. By the end of her first day at the homestead, Eliza experiences a mixture of fatigue, relief, and cautious optimism. She is far from fully comfortable or confident, but she senses that the homestead, with its simplicity, order, and connection to the land, could become a home, a place where she might carve out a life of her own. The dynamics between her and Dakota are delicate yet promising. He provides guidance without dominance, protection without control, and kindness without expectation. The homestead, in its quiet endurance, becomes a crucible in which trust, respect, and the seeds of affection begin to grow. In this way, settling into the homestead is not merely a plot point but a rich narrative moment. It deepens character development, establishes the setting as a living, breathing presence, and sets the emotional stage for the challenges, growth, and connections that will define the story moving forward. Eliza's fear. Settling into the homestead is only the beginning of Eliza's journey. The next challenge she faces is navigating the world of Dakota's culture, a world that is unfamiliar, rich, and layered with traditions she has never encountered. For Eliza, every small gesture, routine, or ceremony feels both intriguing and intimidating. This cultural clash forms a core part of her adaptation, shaping not only her understanding of Dakota, but also her evolving sense of self in this new life. From the very first morning, Eliza notices the differences. Dakota rises with the sun, moving through the homestead with a quiet rhythm that contrasts sharply with the hurried routines she knew in the city. He begins with tasks that are intimately tied to the land, checking traps, feeding livestock, and inspecting crops. Each action is deliberate and respectful, demonstrating an understanding of the natural world that Eliza finds mesmerizing. She watches him, fascinated but unsure of how to contribute without overstepping or offending. Her fear returns in waves, fear of making mistakes, of breaking unspoken rules, or of appearing incompetent. But her curiosity gradually pushes her to observe more closely, asking questions in careful, tentative tones. Dakota, aware of her hesitation, adopts a gentle teaching approach. He explains why certain tasks are done in specific ways, how to prepare the soil to ensure healthy crops, the significance of certain herbs in daily life, and how to read subtle signs in nature that indicate weather changes or approaching danger. Each explanation is more than practical. It is a window into a worldview that balances survival, respect for the land, and spiritual understanding. Eliza begins to realize that these practices are not arbitrary. They are a reflection of centuries of knowledge passed down through generations. The realization both humbles and excites her, highlighting how much she has yet to learn. Beyond practical knowledge, Eliza encounters the spiritual and ceremonial aspects of Apache life. Dakota invites her to observe small rituals, such as offerings to honor the land or prayers for guidance. These ceremonies are intimate and deeply meaningful, filled with symbolism and subtle gestures that communicate respect, gratitude, and connection. At first, Eliza is unsure how to behave. She does not want to appear disrespectful, yet she feels drawn to participate. Dakota encourages her gently, explaining the significance of each action without insisting, allowing her to absorb and engage at her own pace. Through these experiences, she begins to grasp a worldview that intertwines nature, community, and personal responsibility in ways that are entirely new to her. The cultural differences extend to interpersonal interactions as well. Dakota's communication style, a mix of quiet observation, teasing humor, and direct honesty, challenges Eliza's expectations of conversation and social hierarchy. In the city, she was accustomed to rigid social norms, polite formalities, and predictable scripts. Here she must navigate a system of understanding built on trust, subtle cues, and mutual respect. She stumbles occasionally, misreading intentions or hesitating at the wrong moments, but Dakota's patience and occasional humor ease the tension. Each misstep becomes a learning opportunity rather than a failure, reinforcing her confidence and deepening her bond with him. As the days pass, Eliza begins to experiment with integrating her own habits and knowledge into this new life. She introduces small elements from her past, baking bread using family recipes, tending a small flower patch, or offering to sew and repair clothing. Dakota observes her contributions with genuine appreciation, recognizing her effort to merge two worlds rather than simply conforming to his. In return, he adapts subtly to her presence, adjusting routines and sharing stories that help her feel included. The give and take of these exchanges fosters mutual respect and lays the groundwork for emotional intimacy. The combination of practical learning, ceremonial exposure, and interpersonal adaptation is transformative. Eliza's fear, which once dominated her every thought, gradually recedes in the face of curiosity and engagement. She discovers a resilience she did not know she possessed, a willingness to step outside her comfort zone, and a capacity to appreciate a culture profoundly different from her own. Meanwhile, Dakota begins to see her not merely as a guest or a bride arranged through letters, but as a partner capable of understanding, contributing, and growing alongside him. By the end of this phase, the homestead is no longer just a place of survival. It becomes a living classroom and a crucible for emotional development. Eliza's curiosity tempers her fear, her missteps teach humility, and her small successes build confidence. Dakota's guidance, humor, and openness nurture trust and connection. The cultural clash that initially felt intimidating evolves into a shared adventure, one that enriches both their lives and sets the stage for deeper bonds, personal growth, and the adventures still to come. As Eliza grows more accustomed to the rhythms of life at the homestead, she begins to understand that the challenges of frontier life extend beyond the natural environment. The town where she first arrived with fear in her eyes represents a complex social landscape that tests her resilience in ways that the homestead never could. In this section, external threats, from gossiping townsfolk to overt hostility, serve to heighten tension, develop character, and further solidify the bond between Eliza and Dakota. From the beginning, it is clear that Eliza's arrival has not gone unnoticed. The townsfolk, a mix of frontier settlers, traders, and itinerant laborers, are suspicious of both her and Dakota. Whispers follow her wherever she goes, speculation about her motives and her future with an Apache man coloring every glance. Some question why a young woman from the East would travel so far, alone, to marry a man whose culture and lifestyle are so different from her own. Others resent Dakota, viewing his marriage to an outsider as a disruption of the town's familiar social order. This suspicion is subtle at first, furtive looks, half-heard comments, lingering stares, but it gradually becomes more pronounced, making Eliza's adjustment even more challenging. Eliza is acutely aware of these glances and remarks. In town, she notices how people part just slightly when she walks by, how children point and whisper, and how some men linger too long with silent judgment in their eyes. She feels the sting of being othered, the sense that she must prove herself not just to Dakota but to an entire community. Her fear resurfaces, compounded by self-doubt and the stark realization that her life at the homestead exists within a larger social ecosystem that she barely understands. For a woman accustomed to city life, where anonymity was sometimes a comfort, the scrutiny is suffocating. Dakota, however, responds to these threats with a combination of calm authority and quiet confidence. He recognizes that danger in this context is not always physical. It often manifests as tension, prejudice, or the potential for escalation. He teaches Eliza subtle ways to navigate these social dynamics, when to speak, when to remain silent, and how to carry herself in a way that commands respect without confrontation. But he also makes it clear that he will protect both her and his homestead if necessary, signaling a level of trust and reliability that begins to ease her anxiety. The tension escalates when a local troublemaker, a man embittered by Dakota's presence and his influence in the community, openly challenges him. Perhaps the man accuses Dakota of taking opportunities that rightfully belong to settlers, or he mocks Eliza's willingness to marry outside her culture. The confrontation, while not physically violent at first, carries the weight of implicit threat. Eliza witnesses firsthand the sharp edge of frontier justice, the precarious balance between diplomacy and self-protection. She is frightened, yet the experience also illuminates Dakota's courage and composure. He handles the confrontation with a measured mixture of assertiveness and restraint, de-escalating the situation when possible, but showing unmistakably that he will defend those he cares about. This external danger serves as a crucible for Eliza's growth. Observing Dakota's bravery and moral strength, she begins to see him not only as a husband-to-be but as a figure worthy of trust and admiration. She realizes that survival in this frontier world requires more than knowledge of the land or domestic skills. It requires emotional resilience, keen observation, and the ability to read human nature. Slowly, her fear shifts from paralysis to a cautious, proactive awareness. She begins to understand that she must cultivate her own courage to thrive in this environment. At the same time, these events draw Eliza and Dakota closer together. Shared threats create shared responsibility, and the trust they build in these moments becomes a foundation for deeper emotional intimacy. The experience of facing town suspicion and danger transforms Eliza's perception of her role. She is no longer simply a newcomer to be protected. She is an active participant in the life and survival of the homestead and, increasingly, in the life of the man she is coming to care for. By the end of this phase, the town's scrutiny and the confrontation with the troublemaker serve multiple purposes. They heighten the stakes of frontier life, challenge Eliza's emotional resilience, and reinforce the strength and reliability of Dakota as a partner. They also begin to turn her fear into respect and, eventually, trust. The tension between the homestead's relative safety and the town's unpredictable hostility underscores the precariousness of her new life, while also illuminating the courage, wisdom, and patience required to navigate it. This section establishes that danger in the frontier is not only environmental but social and psychological, and it demonstrates how adversity can serve as a catalyst for growth, bonding, and the slow transformation of fear into confidence. Eliza's journey continues, shaped by the interplay of curiosity, cultural adaptation, and the protective guiding presence of Dakota. After weeks of navigating the homestead, learning the rhythms of Dakota's world, and facing the scrutiny of the town, Eliza experiences a rare moment of calm and intimacy under the vast star-strewn sky. The night is cool, with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of sage and distant pine, and the only sounds are the soft murmur of a nearby creek and the occasional rustle of nocturnal animals. In this serene setting, Eliza and Dakota find themselves sitting side by side on the porch of the cabin, a quiet space where the weight of daily challenges lifts just enough for vulnerability to emerge. Eliza, who has spent most of her life constrained by societal expectations and fear of judgment, feels the accumulated tension of her new life begin to surface. She gazes at the horizon, her heart heavy with uncertainty, and finally voices what she has been holding inside. She admits her fear, not just the fear of physical danger or unfamiliar routines, but the deeper, more intimate fear of being trapped in a life she cannot navigate, a world that feels alien, and a marriage that began as a transaction rather than a choice. Her voice is quiet, tentative, almost swallowed by the night. Yet there is a courage in speaking these truths aloud. Dakota listens without interruption, his dark eyes reflecting both understanding and compassion. In the silence that follows, he begins to share his own vulnerabilities, emotions and experiences he has rarely expressed. He speaks of loneliness, of the weight of responsibilities that often isolate him from forming meaningful connections, and of the quiet longing for a partner who is not only brave, but willing to see the world as he does. His confessions are raw, honest, and unpolished, revealing a depth of character that Eliza had only glimpsed in fleeting moments. The exchange marks a turning point in their relationship. For the first time, Eliza sees Dakota not just as a strong, capable protector of the homestead, but as a man with emotional depth, fears, and desires that mirror her own. Likewise, Dakota sees Eliza not as a fragile newcomer or an outsider, but as someone who possesses courage, curiosity, and a capacity for empathy. The mutual confessions create a bridge of trust, a fragile but powerful bond that allows both of them to lower their defenses and glimpse the potential for genuine partnership. The intimacy of the night is heightened by small, tangible gestures. Dakota offers her a cup of warm tea, his hands brushing hers ever so slightly in the act of passing it. Eliza responds with a hesitant smile, feeling the warmth of both the tea and the moment. They share stories from their pasts, moments of loss, triumph, and personal revelation, each tale weaving them closer together. The night becomes a tapestry of shared vulnerability, where fear and hope intermingle, and the boundaries between them begin to soften. Importantly, this night also serves as a moment of reflection for Eliza. She recognizes how far she has come from the frightened woman who first stepped off the train. Her fear, while not entirely gone, is now tempered by trust, understanding, and a growing sense of belonging. She begins to see that her life with Dakota is not solely defined by uncertainty or danger, but by the possibilities of connection, love, and personal growth. The act of confession allows her to claim agency over her emotions, to articulate her needs, and to engage with Dakota as an equal rather than as someone simply guided or protected. The night also subtly shifts the dynamics of power and intimacy between them. Dakota's willingness to reveal his vulnerabilities signals that strength is not solely physical. It includes the courage to be open, honest, and emotionally present. Eliza, in turn, demonstrates bravery by voicing her fears and insecurities. Their mutual openness lays the groundwork for a deeper emotional and psychological intimacy that will inform their interactions moving forward. By the end of the night, the bond between Eliza and Dakota has deepened significantly. The confessions, set against the quiet majesty of the frontier night, transform their relationship from one of cautious coexistence into the beginnings of mutual respect, trust, and affection. The fears that once loomed so large in Eliza's mind are softened by connection, while Dakota's previously solitary existence is enriched by the presence of someone willing to see and accept him fully. This scene establishes a critical emotional milestone in the story. It demonstrates how vulnerability can foster trust, how shared fears can become shared strength, and how intimacy, both emotional and eventually romantic, requires honesty, patience, and courage. The Night of Confessions is not just a pause in the action, but a crucible in which the foundation of a genuine partnership is forged, setting the stage for the challenges, adventures, and deeper bonds that will follow. After the night of confessions, the bond between Eliza and Dakota has begun to deepen, yet the frontier life around them is unpredictable, and true trust is tested not only through words, but through action. Part 8 centers on a shared adventure, a tangible challenge that forces Eliza and Dakota to work together, face danger, and recognize each other's strengths. This adventure is both physical and symbolic, representing the next stage of their relationship, where partnership begins to replace uncertainty and fear. The adventure begins one morning when Dakota discovers that some of their livestock have wandered too far from the homestead. Perhaps a storm the night before had spooked the animals, or they had wandered toward the hills drawn by grazing pastures. The sight of missing cattle is immediately alarming. Livestock represents both sustenance and survival. Their loss is a real pressing threat. Dakota prepares quickly, gathering ropes and saddling horses while Eliza observes from the cabin, her heart racing. This situation is serious. It demands focus, courage, and coordination. Despite her lingering fear, Eliza insists on accompanying him. She recognizes that avoiding the situation would only reinforce her sense of helplessness and dependence. Dakota, understanding her resolve, agrees, though he takes extra care to instruct her on safety and technique. The ride begins in silence, each horse carefully stepping through uneven terrain as the duo navigates hills, shallow creeks, and patches of dense brush. The physical demands of riding and controlling the horses test Eliza's endurance, but Dakota's patient guidance allows her to adapt and gain confidence. The true challenge arises when they locate the livestock. The animals, scattered and skittish, resist capture. The work requires careful strategy. Dakota uses his knowledge of the terrain to anticipate their movement, while Eliza attempts to coax the frightened animals with gentle words and calm presence. Initially, her efforts seem futile. A sudden noise startles a cow, sending it running further away. Dakota steps in to redirect it, but he does so without scolding her, instead offering tips in an encouraging tone. He shows her that mistakes are part of learning, and that courage is not about perfection but persistence. As they gradually round up the livestock, Eliza begins to understand the rhythm of the task, moving with the animals rather than against them. She discovers the value of observation, patience, and coordination. Each small success, catching a stray calf, leading a cow back to the path, becomes a tangible marker of her growing competence. Dakota notices her progress with quiet pride, his earlier admiration now coupled with recognition of her resilience and ability to contribute meaningfully to their shared life. The shared adventure also deepens emotional intimacy. In moments of exhaustion or minor danger, a cow charging unexpectedly, a horse slipping slightly on rocky terrain, they instinctively rely on each other. Dakota steadies Eliza's horse with a reassuring touch. She alerts him to a potential hazard he might have overlooked. These exchanges, though practical, carry profound symbolic weight. They illustrate the evolution of their relationship from cautious trust to active partnership. Each small action reinforces the idea that they are stronger together than apart. By the time they return to the homestead, sun low in the sky and the livestock accounted for, a sense of accomplishment and relief permeates the air. Eliza feels a newfound confidence in her ability to navigate the physical and emotional demands of frontier life. Dakota, in turn, feels more certain that Eliza is not only a partner in domestic life, but also someone capable of standing beside him in moments of challenge. Their laughter during the ride home, shared observations, and playful teasing solidify the emotional bonds forged through the day's trials. The shared adventure serves multiple narrative purposes. It provides action and tension to balance the quieter, introspective moments of the story. It demonstrates character growth for Eliza. Her fear is gradually transformed into courage, skill, and confidence. It highlights Dakota's patience, teaching ability, and appreciation for her developing abilities. Most importantly, it strengthens their partnership, showing that love and trust are built not only through words but through shared experience, mutual reliance, and the ability to face challenges together. By the end of Part 8, the homestead is no longer just a shelter or a classroom for Eliza. It is the stage for a growing partnership, a place where trust, respect, and affection are continuously tested and reinforced. The shared adventure marks a turning point, proving that both characters are capable of supporting, protecting, and understanding each other in ways that will sustain them through the challenges yet to come. Following the shared adventure, Eliza's confidence and competence have grown significantly, and she begins to navigate life at the homestead and in the surrounding town with more assurance. Part 9 centers on breaking social and cultural barriers, both internal and external, allowing Eliza to blend her own identity with the Apache way of life and earn the tentative acceptance of the community. This phase highlights the evolution of her relationship with Dakota and emphasizes themes of adaptation, mutual respect, and social integration. The first barrier Eliza confronts is internal, the lingering sense of fear and inadequacy that has accompanied her since arriving. Throughout her time at the homestead, she has proven to herself that she is capable of physical work, problem-solving, and emotional resilience. Now she faces the challenge of fully embracing Dakota's culture, not as an outsider or guest, but as a participant. She begins to engage more confidently in daily routines, such as preparing food using traditional methods, assisting with ceremonial preparations, and participating in spiritual observances. Each act requires attention, respect, and curiosity. Though she initially worries about making mistakes, she learns that sincerity and willingness to learn are more important than perfection. Dakota's guidance remains central. He encourages her to ask questions, observe rituals closely, and experiment with blending her own customs with theirs. For instance, when preparing a meal, Eliza introduces a small recipe from her childhood, modifying it to include local ingredients and traditional cooking techniques. Dakota notices her effort and appreciation for the culture, responding with encouragement and subtle pride. This exchange symbolizes the fusion of their worlds. Her past life is not erased but harmonized with the tradition she is now embracing. Externally, the town's suspicion of Eliza and Dakota begins to shift. Early gossip and judgment are replaced by cautious curiosity, as townsfolk observe her active engagement with both the homestead and the community. She may assist neighbors with chores, offer her skills in sewing or cooking, or participate in local gatherings. These acts demonstrate her adaptability, work ethic, and respect for Dakota's culture, slowly challenging preconceived notions and softening prejudice. Her courage to step into this unfamiliar social landscape, combined with Dakota's protective presence, begins to bridge the divide between them and the town. A critical moment of social breakthrough occurs when Eliza successfully participates in a community event, a feast, a shared labor task, or a ceremonial celebration. Her involvement is not merely tolerated, it is acknowledged and appreciated. She demonstrates respect for Apache customs, engages with neighbors authentically, and shows her capability and willingness to contribute meaningfully. This marks a turning point in the town's perception. She is no longer an outsider brought by circumstance, but a member of the community in her own right. Emotionally, this phase strengthens the bond between Eliza and Dakota. Their shared growth fosters deep trust, mutual admiration, and a sense of partnership that goes beyond romantic interest. Eliza feels increasingly empowered, understanding that she is not only dependent on Dakota for protection or guidance, but also an active contributor to their shared life and social environment. Dakota, in turn, gains confidence in her judgment, courage, and adaptability, seeing her as a true partner who can stand beside him in both domestic and social spheres. The breaking of barriers also symbolizes the larger theme of integration, how individuals from different worlds can come together without erasing their identities. Eliza does not abandon her past. She incorporates it into her new life. Dakota does not force assimilation. He encourages her learning and participation at her own pace. Their relationship becomes a model for balance between respect for tradition and openness to new perspectives, highlighting the story's emphasis on trust, collaboration, and emotional growth. By the end of Part 9, fear and uncertainty have largely given way to confidence and belonging. Eliza is accepted by both Dakota and the broader community, not because she has conformed completely, but because she has shown courage, adaptability, and sincerity. Dakota and Eliza are no longer merely husband and bride. They are a team, their bond strengthened by shared experiences, mutual respect, and the triumph over cultural and social barriers. The homestead, once a place of isolation, has become a center of connection, growth, and shared purpose. This section prepares the narrative for the final phase, where the story culminates in a hopeful, forward-looking resolution. Eliza's transformation, from fearful newcomer to confident partner, is emblematic of the journey's overarching themes: courage, adaptation, mutual respect, and the blending of worlds through trust and love. After months of adjustment, challenge, and growth, the story culminates in a sense of renewal and hope. Part 10, A New Beginning, serves as the resolution, highlighting how Eliza and Dakota have transformed individually and as a couple. The fear and uncertainty that once defined Eliza's arrival have been replaced with confidence, trust, and a profound sense of belonging. Similarly, Dakota's solitary, cautious existence has blossomed into a partnership grounded in mutual respect, affection, and shared purpose. The day begins with a quiet, contemplative morning at the homestead. Sunlight spills across the cabin's wooden floor, illuminating the simple comforts of the home that has become both a refuge and a stage for growth. Eliza moves with a newfound ease, her actions deliberate and confident as she tends to daily chores, feeding the animals, preparing breakfast, and checking the small garden. There is a rhythm to her movements now, a harmony with the land and the routines of frontier life. Her presence feels natural, integrated, and unafraid, a stark contrast to the fearful young woman who once arrived with wide eyes and trembling hands. Dakota, observing her from a distance, experiences a quiet sense of pride. The man who once approached her with playful teasing, "Darlin', I don't bite unless," now sees a partner who has met the challenges of frontier life head-on. Her courage, adaptability, and sincerity have transformed their relationship from a tentative arrangement into a genuine bond. He joins her outside, and together they walk among the livestock, checking fences and ensuring everything is in order. Their interactions are seamless, a testament to the shared adventures, challenges, and confessions that have shaped their journey. There is a quiet intimacy in these simple acts, a communication without words that speaks volumes about their trust and connection. The broader world, too, reflects this transformation. Townsfolk who once whispered and speculated now offer nods of respect and friendly greetings. Eliza, once an outsider, has earned her place not through deference but through competence, sincerity, and a willingness to learn. Her integration into Dakota's world and the surrounding community exemplifies the triumph over social and cultural barriers. The frontier town, once a place of fear and suspicion, has become part of her landscape of belonging, mirroring the personal growth she has achieved within the homestead. Symbolically, the story emphasizes the merging of two worlds. Eliza's past life, her knowledge, and her sensibilities are not erased. Rather, they are harmonized with Dakota's customs, traditions, and intimate connection to the land. Together, they have created a space that honors both her history and his heritage, a partnership built on respect, love, and mutual understanding. Their shared life reflects the story's larger themes: courage, adaptation, and the blending of seemingly disparate worlds through trust and empathy. A pivotal moment occurs when the couple rides together across the plains. The vast landscape stretches endlessly, the mountains framing the horizon, the sky painted in shades of orange and gold by the setting sun. Their horses move in unison, side by side, mirroring the harmony they have cultivated in their relationship. There is laughter, easy conversation, and the occasional teasing remark, reminders of the playful human connection that first sparked when Eliza arrived at the station. Yet beneath the lightheartedness lies a deeper acknowledgement of shared strength and partnership. The journey across the plains becomes both literal and metaphorical, a representation of the uncharted future they now face together, confident in their ability to navigate it side by side. The story closes on a note of emotional fulfillment and forward-looking hope. Eliza's fear has not been erased. It has been transformed into resilience, courage, and confidence. Dakota's solitude has been replaced by companionship, trust, and love. Their bond, forged through trials, cultural exploration, and shared vulnerability, is now robust, ready to weather the uncertainties of frontier life. The homestead, once a place of isolation, stands as a symbol of their growth, a safe, nurturing environment shaped by effort, respect, and mutual commitment. In essence, A New Beginning encapsulates the culmination of the characters' arcs. The story affirms that fear can evolve into courage, isolation into partnership, and uncertainty into hope. Through shared experiences, honest communication, and the blending of worlds, Eliza and Dakota have created a life that is not merely survival, but flourishing, a life rich with love, trust, and the promise of future adventures together. It is a resolution that honors both their individual growth and their collective journey, leaving the reader with a sense of completeness, optimism, and the enduring power of connection.